Hello friends, my name is Austin and today we're going to be talking about how to take a Microsoft Fabric environment and integrate an already existing data lake into it. Let's get to it. Hello, my name is Austin Leibel and I am a trainer for Pragmatic Works, and we do training on Microsoft products like Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps. We do training on Azure, as well as the hot new topic Microsoft Fabric. Now, if you have not seen my Microsoft Fabric Learn with the Nerds 1.5-hour session where we go through and talk about an end-to-end solution for working with Microsoft Fabric for the Power BI developer, we definitely go through and watch that. Check it out because it has some great content in it, and I'm going to be doing multiple videos that spin off of that same workspace, that same lake house I created there. If you're not sure what a lake house is, definitely go check that video out. Now, today the solution we're going to try to build is we already have a data lake that exists outside of our lake house, and we want to go and integrate that data lake into our Microsoft Fabric environment to make sure that we have access to all the data that's existed before Microsoft Fabric was around. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go over into the Microsoft Power BI service and also into the Azure portal for a few moments as well. So let's head over there now. All right, so I'm inside of my Microsoft Power BI Learn with the Nerds workspace. Now I have a lot of different objects here. If you're like, I don't even know what all these are, Austin, not really sure what this is, definitely make sure, again, you go back and check out my end-to-end solution with Microsoft Fabric with that 1.5-hour Learn with the Nerds session I did back in July. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say we have this lake house here. Here's my AdventureWorks lake house. I'm going to go click into that now. In this lake house, we have a bunch of different delta tables. This is our star schema where we have a fact table and dimension tables spinning off of that. We have the ability to go and get new data by either using a data flow Gen 2, a data pipeline, a new shortcut, or just uploading files manually. So if I go over to my get data option, I see that I have the ability to do all that. We do some of these things, the upload files, data pipeline, and a data flow Gen 2 in that Learn with the Nerd session. But the one thing we didn't really explore there, because we just didn't have enough time, and I wish we could have had 3 or 4 hours to talk about this because there's just so much here, but we didn't show how to integrate an already existing data lake into this environment. So what I'm going to do is build that out. I'm going to create a new shortcut to one of those solutions. Now I have the ability to either access my internal OneLake as a source for a shortcut, or I can go through and do external sources as well. And even though this is in Azure, which is a Microsoft product, this is still going to be an external data source that I would need to make a connection to, or I could potentially make a connection to one of the Amazon S3 buckets. But because my data is in Azure, I'm going to go ahead and select the Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 shortcut connector, and that's going to ask for a URL. Now this might be a moment of pause. Like, how do I get my URL? What is my URL of my data lake? How can I find that? Well, that information is actually going to be available to you over in the Azure portal. There might be a couple ways to do that. Typically, when dealing with Microsoft Azure, there are multiple ways to do any one operation. But we're going to go through and show how we can find that URL directly in the Azure portal on the data lake. So let's go over to the Azure portal now. So here is my Azure portal already open to my data lake storage account, my PW YouTube Lake for Austin. And then I'm going to go through over on the settings here and scroll all the way to the bottom. And here are my endpoints. Underneath my settings is my endpoints. That's what I'm going to select for myself. And when I select those, I want to make sure that I have all of the correct settings available. Now there are multiple different endpoints available. So the one I want to choose is my data lake storage endpoint. It's going to have the .dfs in the middle of the core Windows net and the name of my data lake. So I'm going to go ahead and copy out that to my clipboard. I have that copied. Now I can actually go back over to my Power BI where I'm making that connection and simply paste that URL into that. So now I'm going to go through, make a new connection to this connection name. I need to authenticate. I need to make sure that I have the permission to go through and access this. So I'm going to sign in. And it's going to allow me to use single sign-on to go through and select my name, my credentials, and then now I have authenticated with those credentials. I have authorization to go through and access this data lake, so I can go through and say next on this menu now. I have a few more things I want to go through and do. My shortcut name, well, I'm just going to use the name of the data lake that I already have, so I'm going to use PW, YouTube, Lake, ALL, just to make sure I'm pointing to this exact data lake. And then my subpath is actually going to be my training folder. Now, how do I know it's training? If I go back over to the Azure portal and go back up a little bit on my navigational pane over here, and I go over to my containers, I can see a list of all the containers that exist for this data lake. Now, I just have the one here, my training container, and that's what I made the connection to. If I click inside of that container, I can actually see the files that I want to make that connection with. So I have some CSV files, some Parquet files as well. We're going to migrate this over and integrate this into the Lakehouse environment. So now I've gone through, I have my shortcut name, I have my path. I'm going to go ahead and create this connection, create this shortcut. This will take just a few moments for me to actually be able to access the data that lives there. So we've gone through and done this for ourselves. We have the ability now to allow access to that external data lake. Maybe you have a data lake that's existed for some time in your organization and you want to go through and not just lose everything or not move everything over, because there's a lot, right? You're dealing with large quantities of data. That's what a data lake is best used for. But we don't have to do that. We can make a shortcut just as I've done right here. Very, very simple from the UI to go through and employ that. And then you can now access those files here. I can go look at my Snappy Parquet. I can go and look at my CSV. I can rename things. I can delete things. I've made this connection here into that external data lake. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Hopefully you are enjoying all of the Pragmatic Works content around Microsoft Fabric. Expect more to come over the next several weeks and months as we continue to dive in and start working with this as we hopefully move towards some sort of general availability. It is still a product that is in preview, but as we go through and learn more about it, we are really liking what we're seeing with this. So expect more content from other trainers. And if you want to really scale up your knowledge very quickly, definitely go and check out the Pragmatic Works on-demand learning platform, where we have a video series on the introduction to Microsoft Fabric that is phenomenal. So if you want to know more about it, you're still interested, you want to get more in depth, check that out also. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed this one. Hopefully you are ready for more. Definitely hit that like and subscribe button at the bottom to make sure you're getting all the great Pragmatic Works content coming forward. I'll see you in the next one.